WELSTech is a bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersections of technology and ministry. It is part of the podcast network sponsored by WELS, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Our show today is hosted by Martin Spriggs and Sallie Draper. Welcome back to WELSTech, everybody. This is episode 775, and we're recording it on Thursday, April 30th, 2026. My name, Martin Spriggs. Show about technology and ministry you've joined, where we talk about those intersections and helping me talk about technology and ministry and all those intersections. As usual, Sallie Draper. Hello, Sallie.
Good morning, Martin. I'll do my best to help talk, but my voice is not 100%
Not
today.
cooperating.
No, I've got the cherry cough drops on hand, which is a thrill for me because when I was a little kid and I'd get sick, my mom would get to send me to school with those, and I'd get to eat candy all day long while everybody else was jealous. Anyway, throwback to many years ago.
We will understand. So just keep the mute button at the ready, and we'll do the best we can.
I think I'm going to be like the penguins in Madagascar and just smile away.
Okay. Well, the show must go on, as they say. Although we've canceled for sickness before. But we're going to get through this one. This is, as many probably would guess, another show about the topic of the season, which is artificial intelligence. And one thing that occurred to me, and one thing that came through pretty clearly in the survey that the WELS AI Task Force committee ran, 7 months ago, was there's a lot of questions out there about what does AI mean for me? How can I use it in my particular ministry contexts? So that's one thing that the task force has begun to work on, is a set of, we'll call it the top 10 use cases for each kind of ministry. And we've divided it up into 3 sections: pastoral ministry, teaching or education ministry, and then finally administration or leadership. So we're just beginning to tap into those questions. And fortunately, we had a lot of great suggestions along the way, especially in that survey and some of those survey results. So what we've done is kind of taken that, put that in a master list, and we're going to begin our next step on the task force is to take that list and kind of refine it, rework it. We actually applied a little AI magic to the survey to come up with the original list. What were the top 10 things in each of these areas that came from the survey, and then we'll begin to refine that, add our own, take out those things that we don't feel are worthy, and then come up with hopefully a nice list that we can share. One nice thing, and we're not real comfortable sharing the list yet because it's not been vetted and refined and whatever. It's just kind of our starting point. But we are confident enough to begin to talk about a few of these things on the show and maybe get some feedback from you all. But one thing that we did is we began to apply our own tools. In the tech business, they call that eating your own dog food. We just say, we are applying our own principles. And 2 of those documents that we just created, and remember, those are at welstech.wels.net/AI, and you can kind of see some of those that are there. We have an assessment risk matrix. So low, medium, high, how can or how should somebody think about the use of this technology, this particular use of AI in ministry? So the way we graded that was low, proceed with standard oversight, all risk categories score low, medium, at least one category scores medium, strong usage guidelines required, and then finally high, seek alternatives or professional guidance, strict policies required. So we tried to apply those risk ratings to each use case or will. And then we also have an ethical framework, and it has categories like human interaction, accountability, work of the Holy Spirit, authentic voice, perception, transparency, accuracy, privacy, skill sets, patience, trust, those kinds of things. And there we had some nice Bible passages around all those and some descriptive language. So we try and apply those ethical framework principles to these use cases as well. We won't necessarily go through each of those as we talk about some of these on our lists, but just know that the finished product, as we share it, will apply those as we go along too. So that's what we're about today, Sallie.
All right. Well, I think top of my list would be pastoral ministry. And the big question, is this good for writing sermons?
Mm-hmm. That was not a use. Well, the way you phrased it was not a particular
Okay.
use case. But sermons are something that pastors spend a lot of time doing. So it's a fair question. Where does AI play in the sermon creation process? And a couple of the use cases, actually, and these are in no particular order, sermon research, illustration assistance, may be a particular use case. And again, we're a little disclaimer, all of these, because these aren't truly maybe the ones that will be on the list, but these are the ones that were mentioned, in the survey about, well, what about? So we thought we'd bring them up here just as kind of a discussion starter and maybe to get your feedback too. So this would be one of those audience participation shows. So if you have feedback, that would be awesome, to receive it for this show. So sermon research and illustration. So AI assists the pastor in maybe gathering background materials, historical context, cross references, illustrative examples for sermon prep. Those kinds of things. And if you use tools like Logos and those kinds of things, they are beginning to, apply AI tooling to them so that it is easier to search across reference libraries and books and those kinds of things, which I think that's a valid use case. And then the other use case in that category, Sallie, is sermon and communication editing. So
Oh,
reviewing the draft for clarity. So this would be, a tool maybe like Grammarly that looks
mhm.
at grammar or flow or tone, proofreading, similar to the, having somebody take a look or an editor uh, previewing something that might go in the newsletter. So you're checking for grammatical clarity and readability. There have always been tools like that. What reading level have you written the sermon at? Is it that
Mhm.
sixth grade reading level? Is it higher? Are there words that could be clearer? Those kinds of things, flagging sentences that are unclear maybe to the general audience. Maybe asking it what assumptions is this making, just to make sure that you're clear going in that some of these things are not said and you're making an assumption. But I think that's a valid use case as well.
Excellent. And I guess for me, I'm always excited about low-hanging fruit. Like, are there things that pastors can be doing that are just low risk, easy to implement, that kind of thing that would make sense for AI to offer the assist on?
Yeah. Uh, to me, and again, this is another one of the use cases, is member communication. Um, Either in the help in writing, whether that's an email, a newsletter article, or just kind of again understanding the tone, the grammar, writing for clarity, those kinds of things, or just quizzing it on different things that could be communicated in a particular, let's say a newsletter article on a stewardship campaign. Um, what kinds of things maybe could be considered, what kinds of things need to be communicated in maybe an introductory, newsletter article on a program like that. Just kind of explore the cracks and crevices of the communication to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. or that, the flow makes sense and that the reader's going to get it. So I think that would be one. All kinds of things that would go along with planning, um, calendars, scheduling, um, those kinds of things, helpful tooling around a lot of these tools that are out there that could help you there.
Yeah, remembering worship planning and all the people that are involved in that and that need to know what day of the church year it is. And, the choir director might have a special music piece or whatever.
Hmm.
Anyway, just kind of coordinating all of that would be super
Yep.
wonderful to have easier and improved communication in that
Yeah.
regard.
I would say one big overarching use case for AI in ministry is in the brainstorming process. As you're thinking about programs and approaches to different things, whether it's a VBS program or it's a outreach program or whatever it is, it would not hurt, and I've found beneficial in some of my own planning at our congregation, just kind of saying, well, what is out there? And so rather than just a Google search, it can put together kind of a top 10 list or a recommendation of things to consider or talk about, or even if you're putting together an agenda for your own brainstorming meeting with your own ministry teams, what kind of things, what kind of questions, what kind of areas could you include in a meeting like that? So just kind of
Mhm.
your little assistant buddy that kind of thinks in different areas too. So I think those are easy ones.
Yeah, I've seen that demonstrated pretty clearly as we prepare for a little podcast we're a part of, and how it can
Hmm.
take our simple ideas and give us so many different excellent ideas off of that, and some that aren't so great, So that's
Hmm.
where the human interaction with it has to come in, of course.
Yep, for sure. Why don't we move on to like the second area of use cases that we'll be tackling, and that's basically for teachers. And kind of the focus is on pre-K to 12. A lot of teachers responded with that question, what does this look like in my ministry context? And I think there were lots of different suggestions and questions around AI use in education. One of them started with lesson planning and curriculum development. Um, I think mostly for kind of off the shelf kinds of areas like, the core curriculum areas, math, science, reading, English, those kinds of literature, those kinds of things, but probably across the board. So assisting teachers in creating or thinking about or thinking through lesson planning, scope and sequence maps, unit outlines, activity ideas aligned with curriculum standards. Talked to a number of teachers where that they feel that's a big sweet spot of AI where they can compare their lesson plan to standards. And do we check all those boxes so it can systematically go through the standards and align what is in the lesson plan with those standards just to make sure there's a map and a match. So that's one big area, and that would kind of, I think, be, if there is one at the top of the list, that might be one. Another one that comes up a lot, Sallie, when we talk about education and AI is differentiated instruction and accommodation support.
Mhm.
How do we have the time to meet all the different needs of all the different students in a classroom? And now more than ever, probably, there's so much of a range of different needs, educational needs, and how does a teacher do that? Sometimes there's language barriers. Sometimes there's a huge difference between maybe your more advanced learners and some of the more remedial ones. And just how do you create materials that can meet the needs of all of those people? And so AI is often touted, uh, whether or not that's true, I don't know, as a potential aid in that kind of work.
it seems like everything you've described so far for teachers are things that we've made some pretty significant progress on already. We've talked about Magic School and Diffit and all these
Mm-hmm.
kind of amazing tools that are out there already. And I think there are a lot of teachers that are making use of them. And, we ask a lot of our teachers, many of them are in multi-grade classrooms and, you know, doing
Mm-hmm.
extracurriculars and all kinds of things. So having those kind of tools at their disposal, I think is a huge win. And again, with the knowledge that they aren't going to be perfect and they aren't going to do your job for you, but
Mm-hmm.
they do offer so much assistance. I can see this list of use cases falling out perhaps easier than it does for the pastoral side of ministry.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that 100%. Another key area that was mentioned a lot is student feedback and progress reporting assistance.
Mm.
So helping teachers draft individualized student progress notes, report card comments, parent communications, based on, of course, teacher provided observations. Um, so you have to apply all the standards and the ethical framework things to that: authentic voice, accountability, privacy, accuracy, all those things, and what kind of risk that sets. So you have to kind of figure out where that fits in your ministry as well. Um, just some of the same things apply to that we talked about for member communications to parent and school communication drafting. So newsletters, parent emails, classroom updates, event announcements, those kinds of things all are potential use cases for AI assistance. Um,
And as I was describing all those things that teachers are responsible for, this whole side of communication and tracking grades and all those kind of things is on top of a full day of work
mm-hmm,
in the classroom. And so I would expect that these kind of time consuming tasks are going to be really, really beneficial to add some AI assistance to.
mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing that came out of the surveys that ultimately made it on this at least initial list, which be interesting to see if this makes it, is special education and IEP support documentation.
Mm,
And the AI engine that we used to build the list flagged this as a risk of high. It didn't flag too many as high, but this one, it said this is high risk in the areas of privacy, security, and accuracy. So IEP documents contain sensitive, legally protected student data, of course. So when you go into selection of an AI tool, you have to know who's seeing it and what the privacy protections are that are built into that particular tool. And we created some guidance a while back in that guidance folder. I think we call it a guidance folder.
hmm
Provided a document, a policy document that talked a little bit about there are some AI tools that are you do have a privacy rating that are more, let's say, FERPA compliant, for security and document protection than others. They all aren't. So it's important to know that too. Um, so that's an area that'll be interesting as we consider, can AI help here? And is there an AI that would be compliant in the areas of privacy and security as well? So,
Yep, I found that document. We'll make sure we link specifically to these documents we're referencing, but they are all in that nice guidance folder, just like you
yep,
said.
yep. Then the last category that we are carving out here in this maybe use case exercise is administration. And this is probably where we started our conversation way back when, because this is what maybe we would call the low hanging fruit of
Hmm
AI, where it kind of started and where the industry found a foothold, I think, right out of the gate. And there's all kinds of categories here, use cases here. One that we use a lot in the Synod administration work at the Synod level is meeting transcription and minutes generation. So the tools that we use for video conferencing, for instance, Copilot has a function that can transcribe the meeting and then summarize it and create action items from it. And I would I would say to a pretty high degree of accuracy. Doesn't always get the speakers right, but I think it does a pretty good job on content. And I've said this before, probably more accurate than if I took the notes. Um, so that's a big step in the right direction. If nothing more, it's a good aid as you write the minutes or as you write the meeting notes from the transcript or from the summary. It at least is a little memory uh, peg that you can use to say, oh, yeah, we did talk about that and that needs to be addressed. So I would say that's kind of one of those no brainers. If it does it, and all the tools do it now. Zoom does it, Teams does it, Google Meet does it. So there's no reason not to do it.
I'm smiling at AI's description of examples here because it says you could use it to transcribe your 45-minute church council
Oh, yeah,
meeting.
those 45-minute church council meetings. Mm-hmm.
That would be a win, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe if you kind of use the tools that it provides to identify those action items and maybe the reminders that could go along with it and how you automate all that, maybe that work gets done and that council meeting is just a reporting meeting. So,
Well, that would be the dream, wouldn't
wouldn't it?
it?
Of course, document creation, I find it helpful in policy development. So that's an
Mm.
administrative task that it's really hard to write a policy from scratch. So what I've done recently with the help of AI is I'll write a list of, the five important bullet points and see how it weaves it together. So I've done the hard thinking, but it's also going to maybe suggest other areas that aren't in those that would be good to think about in any given policy. So I found that to be super helpful. We've written security policies that way, and it has at its disposal more resources than we might, just from examples from other documents. So I like that.
And again, just keeping in mind this is sensitive data we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
policies and all of those kind of things. So that's going to raise the risk level there, and it takes a discerning person to understand the tools you're using, the security around those tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another use case, Sally, for church and school administration, and this came out in the surveys, but also I think I've seen this firsthand too, is financial reporting and budget analysis.
Mm.
Financial reports are not always human readable. So for maybe the average church member or even the average council member trying to read an income statement or a performance report, I think, or a profit and loss statement, I think AI can be, and we found it super helpful to do an analysis of maybe areas to look at, and maybe those get on the agenda as areas of focus. So I think that's another good use case.
Okay.
Maybe we pick one more out of our list of 10 here.
More low-hanging fruit, event planning. What
Mm-hmm.
church doesn't have events? and
Yep.
and all the planning that goes into them. And you're planning into the future, and before you're done planning that one, it's time to plan the next one. And so having it create a timeline for your VBS program or a supply list for an event that's coming up or some volunteer recruitment messaging
Mm-hmm.
that you can use to get people in on the event and contributing. I think that takes a big burden off because you're constantly in that event planning mode, I believe.
Yep. Yep. And it will likely catch some of the details that maybe you didn't think of in the moment. So I think that's a good use case as well. So that's kind of what we're doing. That's what we're up to at the task force level. And I think it's going to be interesting as we put this list together, because what we'll do next, the plan at least, is to take these use cases and then maybe pick a selection for the writing of case studies. So case studies are different than use cases. Use cases are kind of high level. It's how you might use them. These are some of the tools that you could use. A case study is an actual, history lesson of how somebody took that use case and how it was implemented in their ministry. The tools they used, the thought processes that they went through to get there, the results, the things they do differently, the alternatives that they considered, all those things are helpful to kind of see the use case in action and how somebody used it for the benefit of their ministry. So I think that'll be fun too. And that'll involve many more people than just the task force as we look for people who have used these tools and how they use them. So I'm excited about that section too.
Excellent.
So stay tuned for that. Again, we're not going to publish this, but some of the resources we talked about we'll put in the show notes, and we'll welcome your feedback in any of these areas about use cases, because that's kind of the point that we're at. That we would love some of that feedback, and let us know how AI is showing itself in your ministry. All right, Sallie, how we doing? Cough drop number.
Life is good in Cherryland here.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
Good. Well, I'm going to make you do a little bit of talking. We're up to our ministry resource segment.
Yeah. And I'm going to shine the spotlight on a website we've talked about many times, Ditch That Textbook, and actually the Ditch That Textbook newsletter, because it isn't basically endless supply of education related resources, ed tech specifically. And one of the things that recently was shared in the newsletter has to do with one of the tools we've talked about regarding AI, Notebook LM. So if you aren't familiar with Notebook LM, it's at notebooklm.google, and it would tie to your existing Google accounts. If you're a Google Apps school or whatever, you're going to have this tool available to you basically. And what it allows you to do is kind of build a private user-defined AI, if you want to call it that, where you can feed it your own documents, your own videos, your own presentations, whatever resources you have on a particular topic. And when you ask it questions or interact with it, it's going to pull its information specifically from the resources you give it. It's not going to go outside to the World Wide Web and grab everything on the life cycle of a plant or whatever. It's going to pull from the resources you provide. And it has some amazingly cool tools that it'll use to do that. So obviously you can just interact with it via chat like you would ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot or whatever. But you can also ask it to produce, content such as videos or podcast based on the materials that you've given it. So in the education spectrum, that's pretty important stuff where you can use Google Notebook LM for those things. What the ministry resource is related to getting people into and using Notebook LM and helping them understand it. And Ditch That Textbook has shared 2 different cheat sheets for Notebook LM, and they're each just 2 pages long, short and to the point, but things that you can do to make use of Notebook LM. One is from the teacher's perspective, one is from the student's perspective. So as a teacher, you can create a notebook, add your sources, up to 50 sources per notebook, and they list all the different types of things: PDFs, Google Docs and slides, YouTube transcripts, website URLs, whatever the sources you want to include. And then you can interact with it. You can chat to ask questions, or the studio panel gives you different resources you can generate. I believe now they have infographics and, like I said, podcasts and all kinds of things available for you to use. And so this cheat sheet just kind of walks you through different things you can create: flashcards, quizzes, insider hacks and tips, 5 classroom uses. So here's some use cases, just like we were talking about before, but specific to this tool. Things like a lesson planning hub, professional development, differentiated reading, different use cases, and then some teacher tips and guardrails. Always cite your work, Google Classroom integration, and privacy checks. And then finally, there's a deep research toggle that you can turn on to go even deeper. So those are great teacher tips and checklists that are cheat sheet that you might want to make use of. And then as you introduce your students to it, there is a student version of the cheat sheet. What it's not, building your brain, power prompts for studying. So tell it to create a 10-question quiz and ask me. So don't give me the answers, just let me answer it myself or whatever. Listen and learn audio overviews, so using that podcasting capability. Active learning, where you can tell the AI act as a tutor and ask me a hard question, one hard question at a time. If I'm wrong, give me a hint instead of the answer. Mind mapping, note synthesis, night before the test routine, ethics checklist, all these things that you want to make students aware of and how it can be a tool that can help them in their learning process. So we will have links in the show notes to ditch that textbook's notebook LM cheat sheets for teachers and students.
Nice. Yeah, we on the podcast are big fans of Notebook LM because of the specificity of its scope that you can prescribe, which is awesome. You can say this is the content that you will deal with. So it's not the universe; it's your personally created universe. So kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you feel you need a break? You want me to take my pick of the week, or do you want to dive in?
Why don't you go ahead? That's a good idea.
Okay. Take a cough drop. My pick of the week, I can't believe I have not picked this yet, but its timing is great because there's a Mother's Day sale on this little piece of tech, and that is the Oslo Sleep Buds, OZLO Sleep Buds. So a couple of Bose engineers. Bose is one of the premium audio companies, headphone companies out there. Some guys that left Bose and decided we need to create some earbuds that you can wear while sleeping. I know some people who use like AirPods while they try and sleep, but those I've tried and those are not comfortable. So they set out to build a sleep bud, so to speak, that can fit nicely in your ear. So I've got a pair that I bought a couple years ago, and they fit nice and flush to your eardrum. So there's you can, if you're a side sleeper, you really don't feel them. You have to get a little bit used to them. It depends on your ear shape, I guess. And there's different ear tip sizes, but they're super lightweight. They sit in your ear, and they basically connect to its case, which connects to your device. So it's an iPhone, Android phone, whatever, and it can do a couple of things. It can play anything that your phone can play. So if you want to listen to an audiobook, whatever music you want to play, it will play that through these. And it is smart enough to know it's got some biometric sensing in there that if you fall asleep to your audiobook, it will kick in with white noise or whatever noise you've got the app set to. And there's all kinds of settings. I think there's probably 30 or 40 different sounds from crickets to thunder to streams to airplane noise to just white noise, different kinds of white noise, very customizable. So this is made if you've got a noisy environment, maybe a snoring partner or traffic noise, or you just need noise while you sleep. All my kids kind of grew up with fans on, so they have now they require that when they go to sleep. But this is a way to provide that. in a comfortable way, safe way. They are not noise canceling, and they did that on purpose. They could have, but they're not noise canceling because they want you to have some sense of your surroundings. So because they're earbuds, they do sit in there and they block out a lot of the sound. But if your smoke alarm went off, for instance, you could still hear that. If your partner wanted to wake you up and was, in distress or whatever, you could hear that too. But for the most part, what you hear is either the audio that's playing or the on your phone, whether that's a podcast or a book or whatever, music, or your selected white noise or whatever it is that you want to play. Um, it also has a sleep timer, so if you want it to stop after, excuse me, Sally, I need a cough drop. Ah, um, so it will sense all that, and you can set a sleep timer, and it'll be off and whatever. It has a charging case and very portable, and the app is really well built. And right now, like I mentioned, they're having a Mother's Day sale. I think it's $100 off, so they're not cheap. I think they're $349 off the shelf. $100 off makes it $249, which kind of puts it in that AirPods category, AirPods Pro category. But I think it provides a little bit more function, and it sits right beside my bed. I take it on vacation, so that when we're out there camping and we're in a noisy environment, I've got those at the ready as well. But I would give it 2 thumbs up. That's the Oslo, Ozlo Sleep Buds. It's my pick of the week.
So do you listen to crickets or what's your
I
preference?
listened to, I think I custom created like a green noise, green white noise, something or other that was
Okay.
soothing to my ears. But
Okay.
and I know that some people listen to like the ocean waves or, a babbling brook or whatever. I don't know. It's all kinds of little devices you can put in your bedroom that do this, but this is this is just your little personal noise machine. Are you
Cool.
ready, Sally?
I hope so. See me through to the end. So I'm going to go back to Ditch That Textbook with my pick of the week. You can tell whose newsletter I favor. But this one, I think is really cool. He's mentioned before, that's Matt Miller, the author behind Ditch That Textbook, that Google has a new option available to you called Google Vids. It's built into your Google Drive, so you can choose to do docs, sheets, slides, and forms as you have been able to in the past. But now there's a new option for Google Vids, which allows you to create video. And there's a help document I can link you to. It lets you use AI to create videos, start with a template, record and upload. Or, as he pointed out in the article I was reading, you can turn your slide deck into a video, have a great Google Slides presentation. You can transform it into a video where each slide becomes a scene. So, kind of like we're seeing baked into Notebook LM, where it will generate slide decks for you and then turn them into videos. It's obviously using this Google Vids engine to do that. So, his rather short. I don't think it would take you too long to get through his help document that's here, but he kind of walks you through all the different icons and ways that you operate the software. And then he has how to use it in the classroom, everything from introducing a lesson or unit, highlighting students' work, um, explainer videos for vocab or key terms, making history come to life, just creating all kinds of different videos. Um, Lots of good ideas here for you. I also found the Google overview of Google videos or Google Vids as well to share. And so they kind of walk you through and show an AI generated birthday party and just different capabilities that you can turn on. And it's pretty cool because you can pick your avatar and kind of a background scene for them if you want, a narrator to be featured, and you can ensure that it is consistent throughout and things like that. So it's a pretty cool overview if you have a moment to look at either of these documents around Google Vids and get started using it for your video creation tool. Free.
Nice. I like
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. All right. That's it for our picks of the week. in the last segment of the show, our community news and feedback. Make you talk a little bit more, Sally. What do we got in this category?
Well, it's a big surprise. It says in our notes, WELSTech changes. And what could that mean? But that WELSTech has a kind of a facelift on our site design. We've got a new
Hmm.
hosting behind the scenes. So we're no longer a WordPress site, but hosted using HubSpot actually. And it's a clean, nice site design. We've done our best to convert all 774 existing podcasts over to this new platform. But you're going to find the same ministry resources, picks of the week, and other resources, including that AI page that Martin mentioned earlier, wellstech.wels.net/AI. In addition, for those with eagle eyes, you may have noticed that when you go to wellstech.wels.net, you resolve to wellstech.wels.org. Oh my goodness, we're not a .net anymore, but the .net still works if that's how you want to get there. So lots of behind the scenes work went into this. Obviously, shout out to Julie Duran and her efforts um, with others involved, of course, but we're really happy to be on this new platform and bringing you WELSTech 775 from our new location.
And you still have the ability to go there and leave. I think you can leave comments. I actually didn't test that, but I think we can.
We can. If you go
All
into a
right.
particular show, then there's the ability to add comments
Perfect.
right down
Yep.
here at
Yep.
the bottom.
Right at the
So,
bottom.
mm-hmm,
But all of our links there to all our socials is still there. And
mm-hmm.
again, nothing changes about our email address. WELSTech@wels.net is the way to send us email. So if you've got those AI use cases that you'd like to share, like we talked about in the show today, please use that. All right, Sally, we made it. Another show, 775. There's no, yeah, that's not any kind of anniversary, but it's kind of a neat round number, right? We made it
Sure.
to 775 and onward we move. All kinds of things to talk about yet. So we keep talking. Thank you for joining us. We know you have choices that you could make with your podcasting listening player, and we're glad we're on it and we're glad you're here. So join the conversation and God bless your ministry. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.